In today's tutorial, we're going to be making a festive pig Christmas tree decoration. My name is Charlotte Allen and you have reached my channel, The Felting Alchemist. So I took my inspiration today for the tutorial from a new Netflix film called Slumberland, and in it there's this pig. It's kind of a film about this girl and she kind of dreams these adventures, and in it her pet pig, which is like her cuddly toy, accompanies her on all these dreams, and it's got these button eyes. So I had this idea, I thought, oh, what if we put button eyes on our Christmas tree pig? And also I think pigs are really in at the moment. I think there's the Julia Donaldson book, The Christmas Pig. There are all kinds of things that are pig related at Christmas, so I thought, why not make something really cool? So of course in my mind pigs can fly, so she's got these beautiful golden wings on her, she's got her button eyes, her cute nose, and she's also got a beautiful golden crown as well, which I sort of took inspiration from a little bit from the Nutcracker and the Sugar Plum Fairy. And I think everything just needs some kind of golden, sparkly, glittery crown at Christmas just to make it really festive and magical. So here is what I did to make this a really easy, like ridiculously easy Christmas tree decoration. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need is an 8cm polystyrene ball, and you're also going to need a 4mm pipe cleaner, and I've got a luxury pipe cleaner here which is covered in a very pale pink chenille. So I'm just placing the pipe cleaner through the polystyrene ball to make a hole. Then I'm going to take some super glue, and I've just got some ordinary Gorilla Glue here, and I'm just going to cover roughly about an inch of the end of the pipe cleaner. So I've taken it out of the polystyrene ball. I'm just going to cover it in some glue. Don't need loads because it's super glue, and then I'm just going to reinsert it then back into the hole I've already made. And just be really careful that you don't bend the pipe cleaner as you do this, because it will become really difficult to reinsert it, so just be sure to keep it nice and straight. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my very pale sort of flesh coloured pink merino wool bats here, and I'm going to cover the entire ball with the ball bats. So I'm just flattening it out, I'm just pulling it out, pulling the fibres apart slightly, just so I've got a nice even thickness, and then I'm just going to take my medium twisted needles and I'm just going to felt this down into my polystyrene ball. So this can take a little while, but just make sure that it's everything is secured in nice and firmly. You really want to make sure that your needles penetrate through the wool into the polystyrene ball. The more you stab into the polystyrene ball, it will degrade the balls, so that's something to bear in mind, but at the same time you want to make sure that you're really getting everything nice and firmly felted down. So I'm just using my needles just to pull down those ends of wool there, just to get those loose fibres felted down, and then any areas where I've got no wool, I'll just take some more sections of my pink merino wool and then just use that to cover up any bare areas, any areas where you can see that polystyrene ball poking through.
Snow starts to fall, and then you know it's Christmas for the children of all.
So eventually your ball should look something like this. So it's covered in the lovely beautiful pink merino wool, and you've still got your pipe cleaner poking out of the back end of our ball as well. So I'm just going to take my wire cutters here, and I'm just going to trim off some of that length. So I've got roughly about 3 inches ish of pipe cleaner then poking out from the back of our ball, and this is going to form the tail of our little piggy wig that is going to hang from our Christmas tree. So now that I've trimmed that, I'm just going to go over and look for any areas where there might be a bit more of an opaqueness, where you can still spot the polystyrene ball, and just cover those over with any remaining pink merino wool that I have. So now that the ball is completely covered, I'm going to take some more of my pink merino wool and I'm going to make a rough ball shape. So I'm not taking too much. I've probably got about 5 inches in length here, and it's probably about 3 layers thick. I'm rolling it into a rough ball, and then I'm just using my fine twisted needles here to felt this down into a kind of a circular shape, and we're making our snout now. So I'm just getting rid of those sharp edges, those pointed areas, really smoothing those down and getting a nice round edge. So it's sort of the circumference of it is nice and rounded, but then the middle part is nice and flat, like a pig snout would be, or certainly the pig snout on the pig we're making here. So I'm just using my needles just to go around the edges. I'm just going to check that for size and make sure it's the right proportions. That's looking pretty good to me. That's looking about right. I'd probably say that you want to go for about anywhere between 1.5 inches in length and 1 3/4 inches. I wouldn't go as far as 2 inches. I think that would be a little bit too big. So I'm just going to give it a bit more of a felt and really flatten down those centre parts and really round off those edges. So eventually you should have something that looks like this. So it's around about the same size as the 10p coin, in terms of its diameter. But it's probably, thickness wise, I'd say it's probably around about 1.5 to 2 inches in thickness. But you want to get it nice and firm. You want to have quite a firm felt on this until you get to the stage where it looks like this. I'm then going to place it on my pig's face. So you want to make sure that it's above where the tail is. So just look at it from a side profile. Make sure it's nice and central. Check it with where the tail is to see that it's central with the tail. And then you want to have it slightly above the tail. You don't want to have it below, because when we come to add the other facial features later, it might look a bit strange if it's a bit too low. I'm then going to take some more of my super glue and I'm just going to put a tiny bit just dead centre of our nose. I'm not going to put any around the edges because we want to felt that, but I just want to help my nose to adhere to the polystyrene ball, which is why I'm just adding this touch of super glue here, just to kind of make my life a little bit easier really in terms of getting it to secure itself down. So now I've got that blob of super glue on my nose, I'm just going to hold it against the wool and the polystyrene ball nice and firmly. Just hold it in place for about 30 seconds and then I'm just going to felt around the sides, and I'm not worried about coming into contact with any glue here because I know it's in the middle, so I'm just going to felt around the sides just to start securing it down a bit more. Then I'm going to take some more of my pink merino wool and I'm just going to take enough so that I can cover the nose and I can also cover some of the face. And we're just going to place this over the top of the nose and then felt that down. So we're incorporating the nose and the face all into one. So everything's nicely integrated into each other. So I'm just speeding things up for you here. But as you can see here, I'm just using my needles and I'm using my fine twisted needles now just to felt all this down so I get a lovely smooth finish. And I'm working from the inside outwards as well, as you can see here. So I'm starting from the centre part of where the nose is and then working my way outwards, and that just helps me to disperse any air pockets. It helps me to pull the wool a bit more taut as I'm felting it down as well. So it's just a way of making my life a little bit more easy. Oh, I knocked the camera there, when I'm felting everything down. So eventually you should get to the stage where your nose looks like this. So it's all really nice and firmly secured down and it all looks lovely and blended with the rest of our piggy's face. And those fine needles give it a nice smooth finish as well. And you'll find that if you leave it for a day or two, so a lot of these kind of needle marks that I've made with my fine needles, they'll disperse, they will be eradicated just by the nature of the kind of the wool plumping itself up again. So don't worry if you've got lots of little pinpricks in your work, they will eventually go. And you can always give them a rub with your finger as well if you want to, just to help things along a bit. Okay, so I'm just going around the sides just to get that a bit more firmly felted down. And now I'm just going to get a different coloured pink. This is more of a kind of cotton candy pink if you like, and I'm just going to put some on the end of my pig's nose and felt that down just to give a bit of a different colour. I just quite like the idea of having this different pink colour on the end of his nose to the rest of the pig's face. This is completely optional, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I just quite like the idea of adding a bit more of a brighter pink and making it more kitsch looking. I do love a bit of kitsch, especially at Christmas. I think it shouldn't be called Christmas, it should be called Kitschmas. I did steal that from Paper Chase, so hopefully Paper Chase won't sue me with their lawyers, but I do love the kitsch side of Christmas. I think it's good fun. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some nostrils to our pig's nose now that that additional pink's been felted down, and I just used my extra fine needles for that. I'm using a medium twisted cross star needle just to felt down that nostril there, and just make sure that you're getting 2 nostrils felted down that are nice and symmetrical until you get something that looks like this. So you want your nostrils to be nice and large, so these are probably anywhere between 1 centimetre and 1 1/4 centimetres in diameter, and they're probably about 2 centimetres in their circumference, so quite large. So the next thing you want to do is wrap your tail. So I've got a long strip of the same wool bats that we've been using throughout, the flesh colour. I'm just going to get a bit of wax on my fingernail there to help with it sticking, and then I'm just going to wrap that pipe cleaner that we added at the very beginning of the tutorial with the wool bats, and I'm going to wrap it nice and tightly, making sure it doesn't twist over itself all the way to the end, and then past the end of the tail, and then all the way back down again to the base of the tail, where we're just going to anchor it down with our medium needles here to get it nice and secure. So once everything's anchored down with your tail, I'm just taking a kebab stick here, a wooden kebab stick, and I'm just going to hold it at the base of the tail and then just use it to wrap the rest of my tail around to create that classic kind of piggy twisted tail there. I'm then going to go into my buttons box and find some good eyes for our pig. So I'm not quite sure what I want yet, although this kind of darker pink colour I think would work beautifully. Do I have a matching one? I do indeed. Perfect. So I'm going to add those. I'm just going to check them to make sure they look good. They look perfect. So I'm just going to get a bit more super glue and I'm just going to stick these on. And you just need to hold them on for a few seconds to just help them adhere. And just make sure that when you're adding them that you've still got your tail nice and central, because it'd be very easy to kind of put it so that your nose is the kind of the wrong way up and your tail's upside down or something like that. So just check that everything's in the right position before you add your eyes in, and then once you've got that super glue on, just hold it in place for about anywhere between 30 seconds and a minute. Just going to have a bit of a felt around the nose whilst I wait for it to set, and then eventually you should have both of your eyes in place looking like this. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the mouth. So I've got some brown merino wool here, some just ordinary roving, not a wool bats this time, and I'm just using my twisted needles, my medium twisted needles, just to felt a rough smile into place here. And I'm using my needles side by side. And then once I've got the rough shape in place, I'm just going to switch over to my medium single needle until I've got my mouth in position. Next I'm going to make my ears. So I've got my merino, pink merino wool bats again, and I'm just going to felt a triangular shape. So you've got something that looks like this, and then I'm just going to felt them. Once you've made two of them, you just need to felt them so that you're felting around the back of them. So I'm leaving those loose fibres at the bottom, and they're going to help me to anchor my ear down. So I'm just going to felt initially, again using my medium needles again now, felting those loose fibres so that the back of the fibres are behind the ear, if that makes sense. And then once I've got those fibres around the back felted down, I'm just going to felt the base of the front and help it just adhere a bit more down onto our pig's head. So it's nice and secure. And then once I've got that ear in place, I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the second ear. So eventually you should have your pig with two ears, so he should look like this. So a lot more piggy-like now, but not very magical because he doesn't have his wings. So I'm going to get some card, and as you can see here, I've already had a go at doing one wing, but it was a bit big. So I'm just drawing a slightly smaller, sort of slightly bendy teardrop is how I describe it, on some pink card that I've got, and I'm just going to cut it out with my scissors, and I'm going to use this as a template for cutting out the wings for my pig. So I'm just going to check that that is about the right size, and that is looking good to me. I've got my beautiful sparkly gold felt here, and I'm just cutting two out, so you want to have two here so that they're sort of opposite sides, so you've got one for each side, if that makes sense. And I'm just adhering this down with my glue gun. I tried using super glue, and for some reason I think that perhaps the felt sparkly paper was a bit too absorbent. As you can see, you've got the super glue sort of still on there. It just wouldn't stick, so I had to resort to using my glue gun for this bit. So if you've got a glue gun, ideal. If you don't, there's other glues that probably still work rather than the Gorilla Glue, but I just found that the glue gun worked better for me. And I've just held those down into place for a couple of seconds, and then I've also made a little crown, and it's just a kind of symmetrical zigzag pattern with a slightly higher triangle at the sort of in the middle to create that tiara kind of look. And then I've just put a blob of glue on one end, folded over the other end very carefully because I don't want to burn myself again. Anybody that watched my reef video will know what I'm talking about. I'm emotionally and mentally scarred from that incident. And then once it's all adhered down, I'm just going to add a little bit more glue around the base of the crown. Just just going to check that that looks okay. It looks beautiful. It looks very pretty. I've got a little bit of loose glue there, which I can get rid of in a sec. So you only need a very tiny amount of glue here, not lots, just a little bit, just to help it adhere to our piggy's head. And then you want to have it slightly forward, because remember we need to add our baker's twine to this so that it can hang from the tree. So have it slightly forward, don't have it dead centre. Then I've got a dole needle here and some pink and white baker's twine, and I'm just feeding through my baker's twine into my dole needle, and then I'm going to take my dole needle, which is quite large and it's perfect for needle felting projects because you can get into all sorts of large areas. I'm going to feed it through the base, the bottom of my pig, all the way up to the top. Sometimes this can take a few goes to get the right positioning. I've gone right through the centre here, feeding my needle through, bringing that baker's twine through, and then I'm just going to tie a knot at the bottom just to secure that down. And then I'm just going to do another knot just because I like to be super cautious with these kind of things. Right, nice and taut. And then I'm just going to pull that through, and then I'm just going to take my embroidery scissors and just snip away that excess. Then I'm going to go back to my needle and I'm going to feed it back through the top. You want to try and get this relatively symmetrical because you want it to hang so that it's not wonky. You don't want it on the wonk, but where it comes out in the bottom doesn't really matter. So if it doesn't come out central in the bottom, don't worry, but where it comes out in the top is important. So I'm just going to give myself a bit more length there. I'm going to tie another knot in the bottom, another double knot, and I'm just going to pull that taut, trim away that excess, and then I'm just going to take a bit more of that pink merino and just cover over those knots using my pink merino and my fine twisted needles. Okay, and then just a tiny bit more. Get rid of those so you'll never know they existed. And there you go. Your festive Christmas pig is finished. So I really hope you enjoyed this. I will see you tomorrow with another tutorial. Take care. Bye.